What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Brave and Faithful podcast. I'm your host, Raiden Denicio, and today I have a Army National Guard veteran. He's also a podcaster. Also got a book out. He's going to tell us a little bit about that. I have none other than Richard Kaufman. What's going on, Richard?
Not much, brother. It's finally great to be able to talk to you. We've been friends for a long time. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, man. Before we get started on what you're doing now, can you just tell us a little bit about your time in the National Guard? How that was.
Yep. Well, the first I joined the military when I was 17. Was active duty for 2.5 years. They threw me out for being a drug addict and alcoholic. Got back in 2 years later, joined the National Guard. Kept on getting in trouble. I wasn't drinking, but I kept getting in trouble, and they were due to throw me out for the second time on the end of September of 2001. But what happened?
When did you join the first time? Like, what was the time?
1986.
Okay.
I was
So
17.
you were in for how long?
2.5 years before they threw me out the first time.
And that was because you had
Drug and
and
alcohol.
alcohol. Okay.
Yep. Then I got back in 2 years later. They were going to throw me out again for being in it. And I don't like to curse at all. I try not to, but they throw me out for being an asshole. I kept on getting in trouble. But on the morning of September 11th, 2001, everything changed for me that day. And I dedicated the rest of my life and my military career to helping people that can't help themselves. So within 4 years, I became Soldier of the Year, a non-commissioned officer, and I finished with over 24 years total time in National Guard and active duty.
So the first time you joined, you said it was 1986, and then about 2 years after that, you were discharged, or
Yeah,
1988, and then you joined.
the National Guard in like 91, I think 91 or 92.
Okay, and then from 91, 92, you basically stayed in for
Until
25.
2012,
Okay.
I got hurt on duty, and that's why I'm blind. If you guys can see me, I can't see you. I got hurt on duty and I'm blind right now.
Okay.
So, or else I would have done 30 years if they didn't medically discharge me.
So, tell us a little bit about that, man. Like, so you kind of, you joined and you got in trouble, got on the wrong track of life. What made you decide to go back in?
Well, my uncle made. Well, what happened was I got out of the military. I got a job as a bartender. My first job I was bartending was in New Year's Eve, 1989. Was for a police officer friend of mine, and everything was going great. Liquor was flowing good. I started drinking, and I ended up robbing the bar.
Oh,
And
wow.
he showed up the next day with like 4 or 5 of his friends to come lock me up. I was looking at 5 years, hard time for robbing the bank. I mean, robbing the bar.
Mhm.
But he gave me a chance, and he gave me 24 hours to come up with the money, which my family helped me. And I haven't had a drink since that day, 1989. But my uncle made a snide remark. He said, "You're no good. I knew you were never going to make it as a military man anyway." So that kind of really kept irking at me until I decided there was some unfinished business. So I got back in the military. Like about 2 years later, I got back in the National Guard, New Jersey National. New Jersey National Guard.
Okay. So, no, you mentioned earlier about 25 years total.
Yeah, about 23, 24 years old, 24 years total within
Okay.
national time, regular Army time together.
So, I mean, you've kind of been through a lot of ups and downs, in your career. What would you say was kind of like your biggest takeaway from being in the service?
Uh, Best thing I learned is like I got busted from E4 to E1, I think like 5 times, 2 field grade Article 15s. I learned that you have to stick with the winners and do what the winners do. So after I got busted, I got busted E4 to E1.
Mm-hmm.
And after September 11th, 2001, I started to get the drill an hour early, stay an hour later. I started hanging out with the E5s, E6s, E7s, captains, and lieutenants instead of hanging out with the E1s, the E4s, and E5s. So I basically became a sponge, and I just started listening and doing everything that they were doing, and that's how I became a non-commissioned officer within 4 years and Soldier of the Year.
So, I mean, like you just mentioned, like you've been bust down a couple of times, several times. So what kind of what popped in your head? Like, what was kind of like the aha moment for you to be like, hey man, I got to get my act together, you know?
Well,
Like,
what happened was I was in South Carolina National Guard. Like I said, I was due to be thrown out. So now I had a big TV, and all of my TA-50 was right next to the TV. And on the morning of September 11th, because where I'm sitting right now as we're talking, I'm actually overlooking the Twin Towers. And that's the area that I'm from. So
okay.
we knew people that were in the buildings that day. And I seen the second plane hit, and then I seen the Pentagon get hit, and then Pennsylvania. But what really hit me was they show, when they first started happening, they didn't edit anything,
Mm-hmm.
and they were showing people jumping from the buildings and actually hitting the ground.
All right.
And then they panned to the Pentagon, and there were soldiers being pulled out in body bags. And I'm looking at that, and then I'm looking at my TA-50, and I'm like, wow, I've taken so much for granted in my life. And that's when it hit me. I cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, if you can give me a fifth and sixth chance, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to helping people that can't help themselves. So I called my company commander, had a meeting with them. And the funny thing is, I'm still friends with my company commander now. And they gave me that second chance because they seen something different in me. So that's when I decided, I'm going to dedicate the rest of my life to helping people that can't help themselves. And that's when I tried to become the best soldier that I can be. I went to every school, took every class, every correspondence class. I did everything I can to be the best soldier I could possibly be.
So 9/11 was kind of like your turning point, just changed your life forever.
Yeah.
Like so many of us, that's kind of impacted our lives.
Yeah.
So, like just going from that, you said you made a complete change, 180. You became a successful, military enlistment. What kind of, after you got out of the military, like what kind of led you to what you're doing now?
Well, the day that they medically discharged me was the day that I attempted suicide. And thankfully, I failed at it. And I had to meet up with my wife. Now, we were going to the beach with the kids, and I told her, I said, if I don't get help come Monday morning, I'm probably going to eat my gun. And so we got home and called the VA crisis hotline, and I got in touch with the VA and started going to therapy at our VA, which is amazing. Our VA is amazing. And then probably now the whole time that they have this something is called a warrior transition unit now.
Yeah.
But back then it was called medical hold. So while the whole time I was there, instead of me playing cards or playing checkers or chess, I was reading a lot of books, and the name Gary V kept coming up. And then I seen somewhere that he was from New Jersey, and his father owned a liquor store in New Jersey. So I called his father and said, "Hey, when's your son going to be there?" And he told me when he was going to be there. So I showed up when his son was going to be there. And
at the liquor store.
Huh?
At the liquor store.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I actually got to hang out with
what
Gary.
What time frame? Like what year was this?
This was about I want to say 2 to 3 years now. My book's been out for 2 years, so I'd say about 3 years now.
So about 2018, 2017?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Okay.
So I got to hang out with Gary for a couple of minutes and talk to him. And he's the one that really got me started on podcasting and
Yeah.
book stuff like that.
But you got out, you said
2012.
2012, right?
Yeah.
We talked about like your military career. You served for a while, but you just mentioned that you had you actually tried to commit suicide.
Yep.
What kind of led to that? Like what was the reasoning for that?
Well, because like I said, I lost the sight in my left eye,
Mhm.
and because I couldn't shoot, they said they you can't shoot, we don't need you, and they medically discharged me. So now, for the last 20 years,
Right.
everything I was Sergeant Kaufman. Everything that I did was planned around being Sergeant Kaufman, and I didn't know who I was. So here I am. I lost my vision, and now I don't. I lost my career, and I felt like I had nothing to live for. And I attempted suicide, and thank God, God got me back on track, and that's when I decided to start helping others that are struggling with the same thing. Because people that I've talked to, one of the major things is when people get out of the military, they don't have a mission anymore,
Right.
and they start getting to that deep, dark, depressive state. And then when you have to deal with whatever happened while you were on duty, and having to deal with guilt and shame and stuff like that, you start, dealing with alcohol. It creates the perfect storm, and the military doesn't teach you how to get out of the perfect storm.
Wow.
So
I mean, you've been been through a lot after serving in the National Guard. Uh, so let's just kind of talk about what you're doing now, man. Like you mentioned before, you were listening to Gary Vee, and he kind of got you into like podcasting and writing a book. Like, tell us a little bit more how like that all started. Like,
okay,
where did that initially come from?
well, how the whole thing officially started. I was on a friend of ours podcast. His name is Donnie Boyven. He has a
Oh
podcast
yeah,
called
yeah. I was on his as well.
Success Champions, and we were talking about what I was doing, because during this whole time, I've been in the military. I've either worked at a gym or at a health food store. Or I've been in the health and fitness industry, and I
Mhm.
was telling them how I worked with guys from the WWE, Major League Baseball, NFL, National Basketball Association, and a former world heavyweight champion. I ran his training camp, and we started talking about that. But he wanted to hear about my backstory, and he was so shocked by my backstory, coming back from drug addiction, alcoholism, homelessness, PTSD, traumatic brain injury, and blindness. Well, I wasn't that too blinded. I was half blind by that back then. And he wanted to start. He said, there's so many other health and fitness guys out there, but there's not a lot of people that have been through what I've been through. And that's when he said, well, you need to start a podcast so people can hear that they're not alone, and they can relate to, because they say I'm a guy that's kind of relatable, because everything that I've been through. And he
Right.
said, when the whole podcast started, and that's when he told me to write a book. And I wrote a book, which I shouldn't have done at the point, but I wrote a book. It's out on Amazon. It's been out for about 2 years, but it's every dirty thing that I've ever done in my past.
Why do
I
you
put out.
why do you why do you say that you shouldn't have wrote it then?
Because I get a lot of people that are in the AA and NA say that, you're not supposed to put your dirty laundry out there, but when you're in recovery. But I said, to hell with it. That's my
Right.
story. People need to hear it, that they can come back from it. So I've had a little pushback from the people in recovery, but that's all right, you know.
Okay. So
And
you wrote a book. It's been out for a couple years now. We mentioned earlier you have a podcast yourself, right?
yeah,
Tell us a little bit about that.
well, when I started the podcast, it was when I was still working at the General Nutrition Center that I was at, and it was mostly just reviewing supplements and talking about different health stuff. But then after I lost my vision, which was on my birthday last year, January 30th, I had to do something, because I couldn't work anymore, because I had to retire from the health and fitness industry. So
Okay.
I had to do something. So I was like, you know what? Why don't I just take this podcast to the next level? And that's when I started interviewing veterans, veterpreneurs, entrepreneurs, and now it's grown to be the number 8 podcast in the world right now, veteran-owned podcast.
Yeah, congratulations. I know you're a part of that list from Podcast Magazine that they just put out.
Yeah,
That's awesome, man. So
but it's
congrats.
funny because people, it's not me. It's never about me on the show. It's always about the audience and the people that I'm interviewing. You know, so they call me the veteran Oprah because I'm the guy I'll get deep on you. We'll
Yeah.
talk about things that you never even thought we were going to talk about.
I mean, and that's part of the reason why I think most of us, we want a certain connection. We want to make sure we bring, share the stories of whoever we talk to, just making sure that, they connect with the audience and, share their story. So Richard, so for anybody that's just listening in, talking to Richard Kaufman, also known as the comeback coach, right? Tell us a little bit about that, where that came from.
Oh, well, like I said, we talked to Donnie and we're like, man, you've come back from a lot of stuff. And he's like, and you were talking about how many people I've coached before. He's like, so you need to put it together. And it became the comeback coach. And then when I was talking to Gary, like, right before I left him, I said, you need to give me 2 nuggets before. I said, I drove all the way here. You need to give me 2 nuggets to take with me. And one of them was, he said, make yourself a hashtag. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, make yourself a hashtag. So anytime I do anything on social media, it's hashtag the comeback coach. So anybody can find everything that I'm doing on social media, and it's free and it's quick.
All right. Yeah, that's Gary's. I mean, Gary's just awesome. Tons of content for free that he just gives out. It's up to you to just take action. Yeah.
And my Wounded Warrior hat is actually hanging up in his office. Sometimes you'll see it when he does his videos from his office.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Yeah, he's a really cool dude.
So, so you've been doing the podcasting. You've written a book. What would you say has been like the most rewarding moment or experience you've had so far in your second service?
Probably it was the biggest high, and then it was the biggest low, and then it became the biggest high again. I had the opportunity to talk to General Petraeus and interview him for the podcast. We had a great episode and we were talking, and he says, by the way, because of everything that's going on politically, you're not allowed to publish this.
Oh, wow.
And my heart just dropped. My head dropped, and I was like, all right, yeah, And then I told my wife, and she's like, do you know what an opportunity that is? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, he told you everything he was thinking, and he asked you not to put it out. And if you keep your word, you will have a man that is deep in the government on your side for the rest of your life, because you know that you kept your word and you're a man of your word, and he will send people to you to talk to.
All right.
And I was like, wow. And then all of a sudden, ever since I did that, I've had a couple gentlemen. I got the guy named Brent Gleason. He's a Navy SEAL, just put out a book out, Embracing
right.
Stuff.
Yeah.
He came on already. John McCaskill, another Navy SEAL. We're also getting, hopefully, David Goggins on in a few months. So just because of one relationship that I built trust with, it's bearing fruit without even having to ask for anything.
How long ago was that interview?
Probably about maybe 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just interviewed Brent. His stuff hasn't come out yet. I got to interview the guy, Clinton Lawrence, the guy that got pardoned by Trump, stolen honor. So it's been great. I mean, it's just people have been, because they know that if you tell me something, it doesn't go any further.
Yeah.
And they know I can trust me. So I think that's probably the high point, the low point, and then the high point again.
Right. So Richard, can you give our audience an actionable step that they can, take right now? If they want to be a podcaster, if they want to be an author, write a book, what's one actionable step that they can take right now?
Find out who your audience is. I know you always hear it, find out who your avatar is, but we're taught in the military that it's better to be a sniper and hit the target than just pray and spray.
Mm.
And for a long time, I had my podcast, but it was everywhere, and I was trying to make everybody happy, and nobody was listening. So until I had to niche down and really break it down, that I wanted to have entrepreneurs, veterans, and people with amazing stories
Yeah,
instead of having to do everything. I couldn't do everything.
Yeah, that's a great that's a great tip. First tip that you should do is, you can't be talking to if you talk to everybody, you're not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
So
And,
that's
and it's, yeah.
yeah, that's great advice, man. Just find your niche, find your audience, and it'll come to you. It'll come to you.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you have to put out a lot of episodes for people to start listening, but maybe it's just that one person that you interview, and then all of a sudden everybody starts listening to you and starts checking you out.
Yeah, definitely.
And don't worry about your numbers. Don't worry about
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Because it's, you don't know. Like I interviewed, I thought he was an 8-figure earner. I thought it was going to blow up, and I heard crickets. And then I interviewed Ryan Hemhauser of Disgruntled Veterans, and then all of a sudden 7,000 downloads. So you don't know what's gonna be good and what's gonna be bad. So don't even look at the numbers, or you're gonna go crazy.
Yeah, that's where people kind of get lost. They look at the likes and the shares and things like that. I mean, if you're doing it for a purpose, if you have a purpose, you have that mission of wanting to share other people's story and just wanting to connect with them. It'll come in time. We just all got to be patient.
Yeah.
All right. So Richard, before we go into our second segment here, I got one final question. What's one thing you want our audience to take away from this episode?
First thing is, I would say that the 3 most important words in English language are today I decide. Because once you make a decision, then all you have to do is execute. And that's why we're holding a mental health summit on April 3rd, all from that today I decide.
Tell us a little bit more about this this summit that you're holding.
The day I decide is going to be April 3rd. It's going to be a virtual summit.
Okay.
For anybody that wants to have anybody that's struggling with anything, mind, body, or spirit. We're having like 12 different speakers, and it's going to be free, and it's virtual. So anybody can come hop on, and it's no cost. And it's just going to be a day of learning. And I'm also going to be moderating. So we're going to have a breakout sessions and stuff like that. It's just a day that, if anybody's struggling with anything, there's going to be something there for everybody.
That's awesome, man. And so before we move on, where can they find out more information on this?
There you go. Hashtag today I decide.
Okay.
And they'll be able to just click that and put that in their toolbar, and it'll come up right. You'll be able to, everything will come up where it's going to be at.
Awesome, man. Hey, Richard. So going into our second segment here. So these are the same 5 questions I ask all my guests. So are you ready?
Let me get my drink. I got my Diet Coke. What's up? What do we got?
All right. So first question, what's one hobby you enjoy?
I am the world's worst guitar player. And that is one thing that because I figured if I did eventually go blind, totally blind, and if I learned how to play guitar, something that I will always be able to do for the rest of my life. So I started to learn how to play guitar. Not very well, but I learned how to play guitar. So that's probably my best. And reading has been my biggest. I only have a 9th grade education, but I've read over 5,000 books.
So how long have you been playing guitar?
Probably 6 years.
Okay.
Maybe 7 years. But I think my wife says I'm a collector more than a player. So.
All right. So second question, if you had to choose one person, dead or living, to hang out with for one day, who would it be and why?
Probably my grandma.
Mm.
because we were separated for over 40 years, and I finally reconnected with her for about 3 to 6 months before she passed, and she had Alzheimer's at that point. So she wasn't very coherent. Some days she was, some days she wasn't, but she was the one person that I feel that always loved me. So I would love to be able to just sit and talk to my grandma.
You guys were separated, you said, for 40 years, and then
Yeah.
how
Well,
did you guys?
because my father left when I was 3 months old,
Oh,
and
wow.
so you know how families split up, and
Right.
everybody took a side. And then one day I decided to look up my father, and I found out he died on 12/12/12. But when I looked next to his name, my grandmother's name popped up, and she was at a nursing home. So I got to go to the nursing home and pop in on her and got to meet her after 40 years.
Oh, that's a great story, man. And hopefully, you guys enjoyed the remaining
Yeah,
time you should had.
yeah. So that's my grandma. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Um, so next question, Richard. Recommend a book for our audience to read.
Gary Vaynerchuk, a book called, there's two books. I'm actually going to give you two. Jab, 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 Right Hook is the number one book that I recommend from him. And then his second book, or the book that I like the most by him, is called The Thank You Economy. And so those two books radically changed my business mindset.
Yeah, I got the Jab Jab Right Hook in my collection here.
Yeah.
So yeah, great recommendations there. So next question, what's your favorite quote and why?
Again, it's going to be by Gary V. Because it's something that it's totally changed my life. He said, "Your legacy will always be more valuable than your currency. So focus on your legacy." So, and that's really just changed my life to realize, like I was sitting at a funeral home at uncle's funeral, and it's when I really started thinking, what is my funeral going to be like? Are people going to say that I changed their lives? So that's when I decided to say, you know what, I'm going to start worrying about my legacy more than my currency.
That's awesome quote, man. I love it. It's like a Gary V love-a-thon, right?
There's something like I can only listen to Gary V because I try to be the best Christian man I can be, and you can only hear the F word so many times.
Yeah, that's right, man. There's a certain limit, I guess, some people can
But
listen.
like I said, those are the things that affected me. Like his book, The Thank You Economy. I mean, he's also said, if you promote your friends 10 times more than you promote yourself, you will never have to promote yourself again. That's why you'll never see me promote myself, ever. It's always about promoting others. It's never about promoting. And if I do something, like if I do put a post out about myself, it'll include at least two other different people.
That's awesome, man. I love that mindset, bro. So next question here. Last question. Where do you see yourself in a year, 5 years, or even 10 years from now?
1 year, probably, because still going crazy with this whole COVID thing. So I'll go 5 years. I'm probably going to put out another book. I'm definitely going to put out another book because I've interviewed so many great people. I want to be able to tell their stories, and probably speaking on bigger stages, talking to more people about mental health issues and getting the word out that it's okay not to be okay.
That's awesome, man. Well, Richard, I appreciate you for opening up and telling us a little bit about your story, your background, where you come from, and some of the things that you've been through, your struggles. It takes a lot of courage to to talk about these things, and I appreciate you for sharing it, man, to our audience here. And hopefully, if it's at least touched one person, we've made a difference.
Yep, that's what it's all about. If I can help one person to realize that, because my tagline is everybody loves a comeback story, and today it's your day. So hopefully
Yeah.
we'll get somebody to say, you know what, I need to come back. I'm ready to come back.
And there you go. And with that being said, that's the comeback coach, Richard Kaufman. Again, bro, I appreciate your time, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much. And guys, thank you so much.
All right, all. Take care.